beyond raids, the Viking spirit of exploration. For the Vikings, the sea was not a barrier. It was a road. While much of Europe stayed rooted to the land, Vikings looked toward the horizon. They followed stars, currents, and instinct. Every voyage carried risk. Storms could destroy ships. Unknown shores could mean danger. Food could run out. Yet they sailed anyway. Not because it was easy, because discovery mattered. Small crews crossed vast oceans in wooden ships, guided only by experience and courage. These journeys were not organized by empires. They were driven by families, chieftains, and restless explorers searching for new land and better lives. The spirit turned ordinary farmers into world travelers. Iceland and the birth of new communities. One of the most important migrations led to Iceland. Around the late 9th century, Norse settlers arrived on its empty volcanic shores. They built farms, raised livestock, and formed one of the world's earliest parliamentary systems. Life there was harsh. Cold winds, rocky soil, long winters. Still, the Vikings adapted. They shared resources. They created laws. They preserved stories through oral tradition. Iceland became a cultural center of Norse life. Many Viking sagas were later written down there, keeping their history alive long after the Viking Age ended. These settlers proved something powerful. The Vikings didn't just conquer land, they built societies. Greenland, survival at the edge of the world. Pushing even further west, Viking explorers reached Greenland. This frozen frontier tested everything they knew about survival. They raised cattle where possible, they hunted seals, they traded ivory made from walrus tusks. For several centuries, Viking communities lived on Greenland's icy coasts. But climate slowly changed. Temperatures dropped. Growing seasons shortened. Trade with Europe weakened. Eventually, these settlements faded away. Greenland became a silent reminder of how fragile human ambition can be against nature. The first Europeans in North America. Perhaps the most astonishing Viking journey was led by Leif Erikson. Around the year 1000 AD, he sailed west from Greenland and reached the shores of Canada, nearly 500 years before Columbus. Archaeological evidence confirms a Norse settlement at L'Anse aux Meadows and Newfoundland. This makes Vikings the first known Europeans to set foot in North America. They called this new land Vinland. Forests were thick, rivers were full of fish, the soil looked rich. But conflicts with local indigenous groups and long supply lines made permanent settlement difficult. After a short time, the Vikings returned east. Still, history had been quietly rewritten. The world was larger than Europe had ever imagined. Viking warfare, strategy over brutality. Despite their reputation, Vikings were not chaotic fighters. They used tactics. They formed shield walls. They attacked quickly and withdrew fast. They studied tides and terrain. Surprise was their greatest advantage. Many towns fell not because Viking armies were huge, but because defenders were unprepared. Weapons were simple but effective: axes, spears, swords, round shields. Battles were brutal, but Viking leaders valued strategy over reckless violence. A smart retreat was considered wiser than a heroic death. Victory mattered more than glory. Law, honor, and justice. Viking society was built on honor. Disputes were settled at public assemblies called things. Free men gathered to debate laws, resolve conflicts, and announce punishments. There were no massive prisons. Justice usually meant fines, exile, or compensation to victims' families. Breaking an oath damaged reputation, and reputation meant everything. Without honor, you had no protection. This system created social balance in communities without centralized kings. Order existed, just in a different form. The slow arrival of Christianity. Over time, Christianity spread across Scandinavia. Some Vikings converted peacefully, others resisted. Old gods were replaced by new beliefs. Wooden churches rose where pagan temples once stood. Kings embraced Christianity to strengthen political ties with Europe. By the 11th century, most Viking lands had officially become Christian. This marked the beginning of the end of the Viking Age. Raids decreased. Trade became formalized. Scandinavian kingdoms grew more centralized. The wild era of sea-born warriors slowly faded into history. The end of the Viking Age. Historians often mark 1066 as the symbolic end of the Viking Age. By then, Viking descendants ruled settled kingdoms rather than roaming seas. Their ships stopped arriving unannounced. Their cultures blended with the rest of Europe. But their influence remained. Languages changed. Trade networks survived. Genetic traces spread across continents. The Vikings didn't disappear. They evolved. What the Vikings really left behind. Today, Vikings are remembered for axes and helmets, but their true legacy lies elsewhere. They connected continents, they expanded trade, they explored unknown lands. They proved that courage and curiosity can reshape the world. They were not just raiders, they were builders of bridges between cultures. Ordinary people who dared to sail into the unknown.
Hi, this video is for educational purposes and was edited and structured by me using AI tools.